Hey, I'm Gareth from Park Cameras, and today we're going to run through 5 tips for shooting cityscape photography. Alright, so tip number 1 is all about scouting out your locations ahead of time. So this means finding interesting spots, whether that be an interesting street, a really cool looking building, an interesting kind of skyline from a view up top. Now, when it comes to cities, especially things like London, for example, you're able to often ask in restaurants or in different buildings if you can head up onto the roof. They've often got a rooftop bar or terrace, and a lot of buildings just have an area, an observation deck, right at the top for you to head up to anyway, so you can get some really interesting views. But there's also different areas that you can just head to get different interesting views. Anywhere with water is going to look good, and if you scout out these locations ahead of time, it's going to give you more time for shooting in the right light later in the day. Now, it's also worth noting that it can be worth scouting out where the sun is going to be in the sky, at what kind of time, what the weather's going to be like, so you know what kind of shot you're going to be going for, so you can plan accordingly when you're scouting your locations. And that brings me to tip number 2, which is to shoot in the right light. Now, there's a few different times when it's going to look really nice to shoot in. Golden hour looks really nice, so this is the time just before sunset where the sky is kind of that golden color. You get lots of warm orange tones. The sun's still up and it's giving you that really nice soft cinematic orange light. The city can look really good at this time, especially with traffic or clouds in the sky, and the contrast between that and the city. Anything with water is going to look great as well. And then you've got sunset itself, and if you can get a decent vantage point for that, that can look really, really good. And then, and this is my favorite time, especially at this time of year, is blue hour, which is the time after sunset, where the sky goes a really nice blue color and you get a really great look to different things. This works really well for cityscapes because you get a great contrast between that blue sky and then the orange artificial lights in the city. Now, you can also get all 3 of these different types of lighting earlier in the morning as well, around sunrise, so before, during and after. But obviously the compromise is you have to get up earlier. However, if you want nice empty city streets, or they're not going to be empty, but if you want nice emptier city streets, that can be a great option. You're also sometimes going to get different elements then, like mist and stuff like that. Now, another thing that's important to mention when it comes to lighting is if you're shooting in an area where there's a lot of different lights and darks, it is worth exposing for the highlights. So exposing for the highlights means making sure they are exposed correctly. So the shadows are going to look really quite dark, but it's easier to pull them back in post than it is to recover information from the highlights. So if you blow out the highlights, they're just gone, which is a shame. And if you expose for them and the shadows are really dark, you can pull them back in post much more easily. So if you're in that kind of situation, make sure you're exposing for the highlights so that you get the full picture when you get home. Alright, so tip number 3 is to embrace the bad weather. Now, this is great for cityscapes. Sometimes it can be easy to get disheartened because you look out the window, it's raining, it's cloudy, oh, it's cold, I don't like it, I don't want to go. But actually, this is perfect. Especially rain looks so good. When you've got a rain-soaked city and it's just full of atmosphere. You get reflections because of the water on the ground. The lights look amazing. Everything just looks really, really good. So definitely worth embracing that bad weather. Now, this also goes for cloud. A just empty sky is just boring. That doesn't look very good at all, whereas clouds in the sky can look nice and dramatic, nice and moody. You can get a really different feel for an image when you've got cloud and rain and reflections and everything like that. And similarly, earlier in the morning, you can often get mist, which sometimes obscures your view of taller buildings and things like that, which you'd think would be a shame, but actually that really adds to the whole image. That looks really, really nice. And you can get some really atmospheric, moody, dramatic pictures using these different elements. And especially rain, which is my favorite, gives you that really, really nice atmospheric vibe when you're taking these pictures. Now, tip number 4 is all about composition. So if you found the location, got the weather, got the lighting, you still need to get a good composition. Now, this is where there's a few little tricks that are going to help you to do that. So for one, you can look at leading lines. So this is where you've got different lines running through the picture which guide the viewer through your image. So whether they all point to a particular subject, whether they're all running central and you've got a bit of symmetry there, that can look really, really good. But leading lines just really help to tie your image together and just bring your viewer on kind of a journey through the image. Now, another trick you can use to get good composition is to use the rule of thirds. Now, I use this all the time when shooting anything really, but especially cityscapes as well, because there's a lot going on. You want to position items of interest on those lines within the grid. So where you've got the grid for the rules of third, you want to have the items of interest on those lines, maybe on the intersection, anything like that can really help just tie your image together again and get some good composition. And as I mentioned before, symmetry is a really good way of just bringing everything together as well. So if you've got a street where you can just stand perfectly central and have everything running away from you, or if you've got something else where you can have nice symmetry, that can look great. Now, tip number 5 is all about color tones, knowing your color tones and getting the most out of them. So for example, during blue hour, you get this amazing color contrast between the sky, which is a nice blue, and then the city itself, which is generally more of an orange because of the artificial lights. And that contrasts so well. Those colors are on opposite sides of the color wheel, so they go really well together, and you get an incredibly nice looking image. There's a reason that a lot of people go for like a teal and orange kind of look, and with Cityscapes at blue hour, you can naturally get that kind of color in your image. Another thing that can look great is having an older part of the city, which is maybe more orange, and then having the newer, slightly more futuristic, if you like, part of the city, which will have more of a blue look to it, and having those in the same part of the image, it really gives you that color contrast. Water helps with this as well, and rain as well. I found that having the rainy night in the city really just accentuated the cooler tones, and you've got those nice lights, and it just all ties together. I'm a big fan of using color in photographs. I really like having expressive, vibrant colors, and really with Cityscapes, you can get some really amazing tonal contrast, which just looks so good. And as a bonus tip, add a human interest to the frame. Now, sometimes a cityscape looks great, but just adding someone into it just finishes it off. It can really help to just tie together and finish off a great cityscape photo. So for example, it can add a sense of scale to the image, it can add a bit of a narrative element, or it can simply just give you a bit more feeling to the image and give you a little bit of a different dynamic. So it's definitely worth exploring. So these are our 5 tips plus a bonus tip for cityscape photography. If you have any questions, pop them down below. We'll get back to you as soon as we can. If you liked the video, hit the like button. Make sure to subscribe if you're not already. I'll see you in the next video. And as always, thanks for watching.